You're watching once again a YouTube video presentation of the University of Wyoming Center on Aging. I'm Scott Veach. I'm your host, and on this program we'll be discussing topics of interest for caregivers of loved ones with dementia. We hope that you will subscribe to the channel and you'll hit that thumbs up like button. Both of those actions help the channel to grow and allow us to reach more people. And if you'll tap that notification bell, you'll be alerted each time we upload a new program. And now, this is Once Again. My guest today is Nancy Norton. She is with the Norton Law Office in Jackson, Wyoming, and she specializes in estate planning and elder law. This is actually part two of our discussion. If you haven't seen part one, it will be there. It's one of the posts that we made previously on our YouTube channel. We want to start off again by making it clear that this is not legal advice that we are providing, but it is some suggestions and some directions that you might want to consider if you are caring for someone with dementia. And we encourage you to contact legal support in your area if you have any further questions. Well, Nancy, it's good to be back with you again. In part one, we covered legal planning for caring for someone with dementia, the different kinds, power of attorney for healthcare. One of the things I think that people might think is, whoa, legal matters. I don't know about this. I don't know if I want to get into this. Is that common? What are some barriers that you find people looking at that might prevent them from seeking this kind of care?
There are so many, unfortunately. I think one common one is that people think, I don't own much, I'm not wealthy, and I don't see why I need to start planning to have a will or even powers of attorney. So that, I think, is a big mistake, because everybody has an estate. And really, it's an opportunity for you to decide who you want to give your possessions to. For example, a car, house, checking account, other financial investments. I mean, we all have something. So if you don't have a will, for example, then there are default statutes in every state that say if you don't have your will, then we will decide for you. And those statutes generally work by class of people, not specific individuals. So depending on your family situation, it may not really be what you would want. And so that's something to keep in mind. But I also hear a lot of people say it's really hard to think about end of life. But as we said in our part one of this series, we know injuries and accidents and things like dementia happen. So there may come a time where you don't have the capacity to make these important legal documents. And when that happens, you're sort of at the mercy of these intestacy statutes that exist in every state. Some people feel like they're too young, they're too old, they're too busy. And that's really unfortunate. I see a lot of people in my practice who sadly have had somebody pass away, and they saw the result of their loved one not having these documents in place and the burden it put on the survivors who are already grief-stricken. Now they're sort of guessing on what they need to do, and it puts a lot of pressure on them. It can sadly create conflicts in families. People don't agree. If the family doesn't agree, then it can create a lot of problems down the line.
Is putting together a legal documents, power of attorney for healthcare, is it a long process? How long does it take from the initial meeting to have the documents filed and ready to go?
It really depends on everybody's unique situation, but generally speaking, it could probably be done well within a month. It depends on how quickly the person who wants to make these documents communicates those their wishes and their assets and things like that to their attorney, and then it depends on the attorney's availability as well. But if you, generally speaking, it should take a month or two, not more than that.
When someone first makes an appointment and goes to see an attorney to talk about these matters, what are some of the first questions that the attorney is going to ask? What are the first things they're going to want to know?
I think the first thing is, what concerns do they have? Why did they come in, and what are they thinking in terms of why they want this? I always try to get to the why first. And people have all sorts of reasons, but I would
Such
say,
as,
such as, they really care about their loved ones, and they don't want to be a burden to their loved ones in trying to figure out what happens when my client dies. And it's not the legal documents are so important, but there's a lot of practical considerations too. For example, where's all the financial information? Where are the passwords? Should I talk to a certain real estate agent to sell property? And so I think the legal documents are a terrific foundation, and they're so necessary, but then it goes even beyond that to some more very practical considerations. And if somebody's been through it, they will tell you it's a lot to handle, but getting the legal documents in place is really foundational. And then continuing to ask very practical questions. I mean, it could even be things like, what does somebody want for their funeral or their burial or their celebration of life?
which is more common, to have a family member make the appointment and think it's an important avenue to pursue, or to have maybe the person who's just received the dementia diagnosis? Which is more common?
Um, that's a hard question. I think it's probably the former. And I always try to meet
The
with,
family member or the caregiver?
yeah, I
Mhm.
try to meet with both. And if there's any sign of like serious like incapacity, then I like to meet with the person who has dementia first to get a sense of whether they have any capacity at all, even if it's just um, a small amount. And so, yeah, I like to deal directly with the person who is making the decisions, and in some cases, that is just not possible. So then we look at other ways to build a good foundation for what that person may need for the rest of their life, and then at death.
But it's not a dead end. There are still things you can do if the person
Absolutely,
has reached that stage.
absolutely, absolutely.
There are different kinds of dementia. There's Alzheimer's, there's Lewy body, there is vascular dementia. Does that change anything legally as to what should be pursued, or how to go about looking at this situation legally?
Um, yeah, I think every situation is different, and one thing I have talked to my clients about is dementia directives. So when we talked last time about advanced healthcare directives and healthcare proxies, what can be incorporated into either of those documents, really they're the same document, um, are, gee, now that there's a diagnosis, and depending on how long that diagnosis may play out, I mean, some can go as long as, say, 8 to 10 years. It gives the family time to really think about, how is this going to evolve and what kind of care is going to be needed at different stages of the dementia. And so hopefully there is a healthcare power of attorney in place, and prior to the incapacity being debilitating, where person who has dementia can't make decisions, they have at least expressed some wishes for what type of care they want as their dementia progresses.
I would think that the whole process would change if it's waited until after the dementia patient passes. That kind of opens up a whole new can of worms. Am I right?
Absolutely. Yeah, it does.
Such as.
Uh, well,
We'll get
so
into estate planning 101 here.
yeah. So are you talking about
If the person passes and the family members need legal advice about anything, is it too late? Are there still things that can be done? Or does that ever happen that someone comes to you after the person has passed?
yeah, they occasionally, not too often. I
Mhm.
haven't seen it in my practice all that much, but um I would say it may be too late for some things and not for other things. So unfortunately, if the person's not alive, then it does sort of close some decision-making options. And I would say that goes too for even before the person dies. You know, if they don't have
Mhm.
capacity, then the options get a lot smaller and narrower. But there is a post-death process called probate, and that deals more with the person's assets and what they own and where it
Right.
should go. So if they had a will, you'd follow the terms of the will, or similarly, a living trust, follow the living trust. And if they didn't have those documents, then they might be in a situation where the intestacy statutes of that state would govern disposition of the estate.
There is so much to cover and so little time, and we have painted with a very broad brush today. So you might want to think about maybe some things or two that we haven't covered yet. But I want to ask you, for someone who is in this position, they're caring for someone with dementia and they want to know where to start. How do they find someone? How do they find the attorney or the legal help for someone who really specializes in that? Where do they go?
Yeah, I mean, I would start with the state bar. So usually the state bars have a list of attorneys by specialty. And then I think once you get to that place, you make phone calls and then you interview the attorney very carefully to make sure that he or she can help the family, including the person who has dementia.
Anything that we
Also,
haven't covered? I mean, we've gone through these things pretty quickly.
yeah, well, I was going to say word of mouth is also very helpful,
Oh,
I think.
mhm.
Talking to friends, maybe going to the local senior center or nursing home, talking to folks that work there. They may know an attorney who could help.
Well, we have covered a lot in these two segments, and we hope that you will go back, take a look at part one. Our guest has been Nancy Norton. She is with Norton Law Office in Jackson, Wyoming, specializing in estate planning and elder law. Thanks so much for being with us.
Been a pleasure. Thank you.
And if you have not seen part one, that has already been posted and it's there for you. We talked about the different kinds of legal planning, power of attorney for healthcare. We hope you'll check that one out as well on part one. You've been watching once again a YouTube video presentation of the University of Wyoming Center on Aging. We hope, if you haven't done so already, that you'll subscribe to the channel and hit that thumbs up like button. Both of those actions help the channel to grow and allow us to reach more people. And if you'll tap that notification bell, you'll be alerted each time we upload a new video. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm Scott Veach. We'll see you again next time.